All right. I can't hear you.
And patriarchy and matriarchy.
There you are.
Misunderstanding.
Okay.
And puppies squeaking toys in the background.
Puppies squeaking toys in the background. Can you hear me all right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay, sweet. Good deal. I'm gonna share my screen. So I think something I had started saying last time before we left off was that there is a very detailed one of the dynasties in China, and I can't remember which one now, but if you go look up China in Wikipedia, they actually had this there listed. But there was a time when women could really do anything they wanted to in China, and they could do anything and work anywhere. And it got to be where the most distinguished job was to work at the emperor's palace. And it got to be so highly prized. Every girl wanted to work at the emperor's palace. It was the it thing to do. And there got to be so many girls that wanted to work there that finally one of the emperor's dudes was like, okay, we can't fill this many positions for what we're paying. So if you take like pennies instead of dollars, we'll pay you pennies, and then you can work here. And he thought that would make them all quit desiring this job, but instead they took it. They were like, sure, I'll work in the emperor's palace and get all of this distinguishment.
You know, the weight's going down towards the wellhead.
Yeah, your dad is
not.
And so they literally took pennies just so that they could have the job that gave them social status. Basically.
And I think we've seen that in Western society. I really do. I think a lot of what women think that they're being withheld from opportunity is stuff that, number one, probably isn't the opportunity that you think it is. And number two, are you complaining because you're not getting paid enough? Because if they're not willing to pay you as much as they're willing to pay a man, and you really think that you are as qualified and capable as a man, then why are you taking the job for less money?
Why are you taking the job for less money? Exactly.
You're putting yourself in that position. And if you're telling me that, well, you have to, then you're being run by something different other than your qualifications.
Yeah, pretty much all of my jobs that I have had in my life, I have made more money than a man who would have been in the same position would have made, because I raised my price and I was like, I will work here for this price.
Yeah,
and I got it.
We've got a lot of things right now that only women do that used to be predominantly men, but they get paid a lot less than I think if men were still doing it would be. That is not a patriarchal problem. That is women who have found themselves as like single moms or trying to work themselves through college, being willing to work for less than a man was. Therefore, they were able to get the job. They took less. So they cut the man out of the job basically by low bidding him.
Yes.
So you've put yourself in that position, and we've continued to put ourselves in that position over a period of time.
I mean, humans are typically going to pick the lowest bidder, and they're going to pay the lowest amount of money. So don't feed that human greed there, and you set your price and you go for it.
If you are in a strapped situation where you can't accomplish where you've got responsibilities that you have to take care of, and you have to feed a family or whatever, you know, and I'm not putting that down at all. Some of us find ourselves in that position in different seasons in our lives, and that's okay. All right, we do what we have to do, but that's where we are. We need to see where we're at. You are either doing what you've got to do in your circumstance, in the place that you are at, in the environment that you're living in, and you're doing what you need to do to survive and to feed your family, or you are in a position to be able to say, hey, I'm worth more than this, or this particular job isn't the best for me. I would be much better suited for another thing. You know, we need to quit thinking, oh, we have to have, you know, no, you don't. We can have so much
can do better.
We do. Yes. I mean, there are countries of the world where women find themselves as single moms because of extreme circumstances. They've got several children and they're trying to basically hack it out of the wilderness. And they've got to do what they've got to do. And a lot of times those women carry themselves with more dignity than a lot of American women do in their chosen career.
Yeah.
Let's quit blaming it on the patriarchy, and let's put the responsibility where it needs to be, girls.
Yes. Yeah. We absolutely live in a country that you can go do anything as a woman. There has not been a job that I have met that I've been told I can't work it because I'm a woman. Doesn't exist. So if you want to do it, go out and do it. And if it's not filled by women, ask yourself if it is what you want to do. If there are more male plumbers than there are female, maybe you should ask why. And maybe you should go shovel somebody's crap and then ask why again.
Right. Yes, make sure that that is something that is well suited. I mean, when my mother was working hard labor on the railroad, you know, I never really asked her why she ended up in that position. She really enjoyed construction work. Okay. She drove heavy equipment. She had that upper arm strength that she was able to do a lot of that stuff. And she just really enjoyed it. Plus she was around a lot of good looking guys usually. And my mom was all into that. So
right. She knew where the happy hunting grounds were.
Yes.
So, and there was no competition either. She was like the only woman.
Yeah, and she looked good in a tank top out there, shoveling, hammering, or whatever she was doing. Oh yeah, her some sweeties that way.
So instead of blaming toxic patriarchy, toxic masculinity, let's just be humans here for a minute and realize that anybody and anything can be toxic or healthy.
Yes.
And we
stay
need
at home moms that were toxic. There was a time in my life because of my raising and trying to break free of the abuse that I grew up with, that I was probably one of those toxic moms for a while. I was severely independent and very controlling and very angry a lot. So let's just stop for a second and say we all have our toxic moments. Okay. It's not, toxicity isn't a male thing. It's not a female thing. It is something we all go through at some point in time. We can be toxic to ourselves. And usually when we're being toxic to ourselves, then it overflows and we end up being toxic to the people around us unknowingly and not even wanting to. Very, very seldom is a toxic person wanting to be toxic.
Right.
Somebody is toxic to them, and this is the overflow of what's been going on in their lives.
Yes, but just because you are toxic, it may not have been your fault that you have toxic habits. that you
Not an
curated by
excuse.
having to cope, but it is your responsibility to clear that up.
And that's where we move to this healthy in the slide, being honest. And I think I would have put honest with yourself first and then with others, because a lot of times we're not honest with ourselves. I don't want anything.
Right.
You know, it's hard to be honest with yourself. It's hard to forgive yourself when you know that you have fallen short. Okay. So, you know, if you can't be honest with yourself, it causes a dishonesty, and that causes a toxicity.
Yeah.
And, you know, accepting feedback and help from others, that's really hard. We tend to be prideful people. So accepting help and feedback from others. And a lot of times people will accept help to a point, but then they don't want any feedback. They don't want help getting out of the situation that they need help with.
Yeah, that's where they will very often apologize, but then not change.
Right. They don't admit their weakness. They're blaming it on circumstances or something else and say, I need the help, but I don't want you helping me get out of this. I don't want to
work on my problem, and I don't want to change because
So
it's somebody else's fault.
Right. And that's where we've got a healthy person faces the problem and works on it. The only person that you can change is you. So if somebody tells you that it's not about you, they're full of it, because that's the only person it can be about, because you are the only person you can change. Now, if you're constantly the person that I want this and I want that and I deserve this and I deserve that, you need to get over yourself. And it is about you. It is about you getting over yourself and not thinking that that everybody else needs to bow down to you and give you everything that you think you want. You have to get up and start working for it and reevaluate your desires and make sure those are really things that you want and that you're willing to work for. So face those problems and say, hey, I've got this particular issue and I need to work through this, and get help if you need it. It's okay to ask for help.
Yeah. Work on your problems, work on growing as a person. If you are not growing, then you are stagnating.
I like this, apologizes and then changes.
Yeah.
You know, some people will apologize, but they apologize with a but. I'm sorry, but, and then they take this defensive, and I apologize, but this happened, or but I felt this way, or but somebody else did something to me.
Well, and then I've seen a lot of people that are like, I'm sorry and I'll do better, and then they don't. And they make the promises and then they don't.
And that's where the Bible has got it right, because the word repent means to turn around and go a different direction. So it's not just an apology. It's not just saying you're sorry. It's actually turning around and going a different direction and say, I've made a mistake. I'm not going to make that same mistake again. I'm going to change the way I'm doing things so I don't fall into that hole again. Yeah.
Right.
Empathetic. I think that's a good one. We need to be empathetic, again, to ourselves and then to others. The Bible says, love your neighbor as yourself. So if you're not loving yourself and you've got bad self-talk going on in your head and stuff, then you can't have that empathy for other people.
Yeah, you can't love other people if you are not learning to love the temple that God has put you in.
Right.
Another big one I see a lot of people trip on is insisting on blind trust. Well, they should trust me. And well, why don't you trust me to just do this? And it's like, no, and especially if it is somebody that has broken trust before, we all have negative things about us. We all have positive things about us. We have all broken somebody's trust at some point, and it is not their job to just blindly trust us.
Even trust myself.
Right.
I mean, especially around the cookie jar, or
right. And that's something that, again, even if you've got that self-doubt and you aren't trusting yourself, you can go back on this Bible verse, John 10:37-38, is Jesus talking about, don't just take my word for it, but listen to my words and then compare them to my Father's words and figure out who you can trust here. And
Yeah.
it
He
was
wasn't even saying to blindly trust him. Yeah.
yes.
And God notoriously throughout the Old Testament has said, I'm the God that did this. I did this. I did this. He was saying, you have a reason to trust me because of these things that I have done for you. And he doesn't just expect us to just trust him out of the blue for no reason. And so, yeah, somebody is telling you that you need to trust. No, not necessarily. Not necessarily.
You guys need to discuss it and communicate and have a plan for how you can start building that trust. You can't really see this very good, I bet, with our faces over it. But I thought I would just kind of throw in, these were the vows that I wrote for my husband and I did a whole, before I got married, I did a whole Bible study on the roles of men and women in the Bible. And again, there was not a lot different between their roles and what God was constantly telling them to do. It was very much the same thing. The major difference between men and women, whenever he would actually split them and talk to them separately, was men, love your wife, because that's not how men are naturally wired. And again, that's a biological thing.
And that's not just a namby-pamby love. I like that way you have nourish and cherish. There's a depth of that love there. And I would say that's usually because women tend to give so much of themselves nourishing others.
Yes.
Whether it's in a job or with children or whatever it is, we can overgive ourselves and end up overwhelmed and burnt out easily because we are typically more nurturing individuals, and we need somebody to turn around and nurture us. So that's important. And you can't necessarily expect that all of the husband either. We need to rely on God for some of that, and then having a good friend. It's important for women to have a good friend. That way the man isn't having all of that burden there too.
Right.
Honor and respect. The best way for a woman to receive honor and respect is to give honor and respect. So if she's giving honor and respect and she's acting in an honorable and respecting way, and if she is even able to honor and respect somebody who isn't acting honorable and isn't acting respectful, but she can still be respectful to them, then she will receive great respect.
Yeah, one of my last jobs was working for a man who absolutely was the one of the most toxic, despicable people on the face of the planet. I'll just put it that way. As many fun memories as I have with him, he was a terrible person. And there were some days it was incredibly hard to be respectful to him. And he even told me there in his later days, before he died, that I was the most respectful woman he had met. And I wasn't bending over and letting him kick me in the butt or anything like that, or walk all over me. I was still standing up for myself, but I was submitting to my, not to my pride. I was submitting to my faith and giving him the respect of just being a human being created in God's image, showing him that respect and putting my pride aside.
And I know through that situation and the way other people viewed that, you received more respect from him than he gave to anybody else. And it also gained the respect of pretty much the whole community in the process by the time that was over.
Yes.
You've got a lot of respect because you were simply able to give simple, basic respect to someone who wasn't acting respectable.
Yeah, and that included just not, whenever he was being mean and hateful, not being mean and hateful back, and just, okay, you know what, I'm gonna go get you a cup of water. I think we're thirsty and we both need to get a drink, and just always respecting him and seeing to his needs.
Right.
And whenever I didn't feel like it and I just wanted to, well, you know what, you see here. So here are all the Bible verses that I built our vows off of. And again, they really aren't separated that much between men and women. It goes typically to both sides. Ephesians 5 tends to have where it is more split. First Peter has a little bit of it split, but then in First Peter 3, he has, husbands do this, wives do this, and then he says, but finally all of you be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble for God's sake.
Yeah.
And so but otherwise we're all supposed to put on the armor of God. We're all supposed to add to our faith, and all supposed to just be decent human beings.
Right.
So
yeah. So the general is, in a patriarchal society, you have a line of authority that you go through in order for things to work efficiently. The children are tracked through the father's lineage.
Yeah, a patriarchal society is usually chosen because it is more efficient for the time.
If you want to erase the patriarchy, you need to be really careful, because then erasing the patriarchy and putting down the patriarchy and constantly bad-mouthing the patriarchy is effectively anti-Semitic, okay? Because the Semitic people, the Jews, the Muslims, and the Arabs all trace their lineage back to Abraham, who is considered the patriarch.
The patriarch, exactly.
The patriarch.
And I will also throw in there, girls, you guys wanting to set up a matriarchal utopia. Be very careful on that too, because the thing with any matriarchal society or tribe in the past is that they structured that around women because women were life givers and had babies.
Yeah. So you want to go the whole feminism route, then you start really honing in on that ability and start popping them out, girls.
Yeah. I mean, the first feminists that founded feminism,
culture, it was the womb that was the power. Yeah. Because of the birthing scenario. So if you want a truly feministic matriarchal society, then you basically do that by becoming a mother. Yes. Whereas if you have God's patriarchy, just line of authority thing, your identity isn't based on whether or not you have children or are married. Exactly. You can be a celibate individual who's got a career that you're happy and fulfilled in, and you're living your life doing your thing, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. We didn't do the Disney princess thing because I didn't want the girls to think that their identity was based on eventually getting married and having children. If they get married and have children, I love babies and I want lots of grandbabies, but I'm not going to push that. I want them to do their thing. And Kathryn didn't, how old were you when you got married?
28.
28. Okay. She had become an author. She had had several different kinds of jobs in several different industries. She had basically traveled the US. She had done so many things. Your sister Kristyn, only a year and a half younger than you. You guys were married the same year. She had done international dog shows. She had done a lot of things.
She had her own business set up.
Yes, and those are things that are hard to do once you have a husband and children and a household that you're trying to care for. So goodness, girls, get out there and do those things that you would really like to do that might be harder for you to do once, you know.
The big thing is quit fretting about whether it's boys versus girls.
Yeah.
Go out there, be a good human. Don't let anyone step on you, but then don't step on anyone either.
And before you start bashing a whole societal system, know what it is. Understand to the depth of what it is. Because when you're putting down the patriarchy and the evil white man, you are usually doing it in such a way that you don't even realize you're being anti-Semitic. Because a lot of these quote unquote evil white men are Jews. Okay. So you need to look into the depth of what makes them what you're seeing or perceiving as evil. Maybe they are. There are some that I have absolutely no doubt are evil. But you really need to look into the depth of what it is that makes what they're doing wrong, and put down the wrongness of their actions.
Put down the
toxicity
people and not the man.
Yes, and not where he's come from or anything else.
Call out the toxicity, and then the people will weed themselves out.
Yeah, the people will eventually weed themselves out, because those people don't tend to, yeah. Well, this is really good. I hope that some people get some use out of it. I doubt seriously the YouTubers that have frustrated me will even watch this. Some of them and some of their comments are just so out of context. They don't understand what they're saying.
Right.
So, you know,
something I really recommend for people to go read or listen to on audio is Safe People by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. It's a very, 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 very good book on just being a good human and being able to tell out a toxic human from a safe human. Yeah. And go back to that list I had of healthy versus toxic, and really stick to that. Another book I might recommend that I have referenced a little tiny bit from is Conservative Comebacks to Liberal Lies. This one is really kind of out of date, but and it can tend to get a little bit bashy for Democrats. So if you're a Democrat, just be aware. But it's got very good references, very, very tight references, very good facts in it. It is very factual. And there's a lot in there that, hey, girls, patriarchy, matriarchy, know what you actually want in there.
Yeah.
So, and be careful what you are voting for.
You're not going to change society by bashing a part of it. You're going to change society from the ground up. You've got to start at the beginning. You've got to start in your own little corner of the world. So if you make your own little corner of the world a better place, then that's going to make ripples. So it's like a bird landing on a pond. It's going to make ripples going all the way to the edges of the pond. So you need to do that. You make your ripples, make your impact on your little area of the world and let that be the change that you want, rather than bashing the big picture.
Rather than blaming somebody else and being toxic, go be healthy and make
very
it happen.
seldom, very seldom do we know the whole story of somebody else. We know our story from our perspective even, but very seldom do we know the whole story, and definitely from somebody else. So, stop that and work on yourself. Work on loving yourself, being nice to yourself, speaking truth to yourself. Start there. And then, work on bringing joy to the area around you, to the people around you, and what's going on around you. So anyway, I think this was a lot of fun. We will, if there is a topic that you would like to hear us hash out, then please leave in the comments or get a hold of one of us, and we would love to hear from you.
Yep. And then be sure to subscribe to us and check out our websites, prairiedusttrail.com and KathrynJFogleman.com.
You sign up for the newsletters. There's some freebies. Yes.
Yep, sign up for the newsletters, get some freebies, and then also we will have this topics like this on the blogs too. So where we can get a little more in depth on certain areas of it. So,
right.
All right. And then I guess we will see you in the next video. Say bye-bye.
Okay. Say bye-bye.
Right here.
Bye.
Say bye-bye. Good job.